Will US want to interfere in Indian elections? Perhaps not directly, but they will certainly play the game, and that will happen. The idea is to have somebody more manageable. And in my opinion, I think that Prime Minister Modi, who is by current ratings as the most popular head of state in any country, he is not a manageable guy. जैसे कि यूएस में एम्बेसडर की जो नॉमिनेशन होती है वो होता है कि किसने पार्टी को जितना पैसा दिया. सो यू बाय द एम्बेसडरशिप. अनफॉर्चुनेट बट दैट्स द वे इट इज. मैं चर्चा कर रहा था किसी से कि कुंभकर्ण श्रीलंका में रावण का भाई था और हम हिंदू यहाँ सो गए. मजाक होता है
अमेरिका में सो गए.
But where Hindus have a clash with the Christians is on the conversion principle, because they want to convert everybody to that. We are the most compliant faith. But the true problem Hindus have in India, or Indians have in India, is the Islamic part. See, Democrats got upset with Modi because obviously he was getting along very well with Trump.
Yes.
So I have seen
He's
that
getting along very well with Biden too. Except that he doesn't see eye to eye with the Americans on the Ukraine question.
लेकिन ओबामा के समय में बहुत सारे लड़ाई हुई.
सबसे ज़्यादा उसी के साथ.
Exactly. There was a major play by NATO. The whole world knows now. All that Russia wanted, that don't go to Ukraine, NATO, don't join NATO. The commitment given that Ukraine will not join NATO has been violated. There is a group of people in the US, Indians, who are peeved with Mr. Jaipur. California Human Rights Group called Iyers, Mukherjees, Banerjees and Iyengars as Brahminical monsters. Era of non-alignment is over in India. There is an era of active engagement with knowing.
Namaste. Today I have your very, very familiar Shri Vibhuti Jha with me in the studio.
Thank you.
And I welcome Vibhuti Ji in the Jaipur Dialogue studio, and we are going to talk about a very, very important topic, and that is what America is going to do before and during the 2024 elections, the general elections of Indian Lok Sabha. So welcome to Vibhuti Ji. I think the Americans, as we have discussed, especially the American establishment, it generally has that attitude of sounding as if they are great friends of India. They talk of democracy, they talk of shared values, and they talk of human rights. And each of them they use for regime change. So you think that this iron hand in the velvet glove kind of a situation is going to play out in 2024, and they are going to work very actively towards unseating Narendra Modi.
Thank you very much for being in the studio today. We have done many shows together, but today it is a special pleasure to be in Jaipur Dialogue Studios, sitting right across. So this is a tremendous pleasure and honor to be here. Yes, that question has been boggling the minds of many people. We know now, as the famous thing says, that technology has brought out so much in forefront of the conversation that nothing is secret anymore. We know by virtue of reading a very old book, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, that US has indulged in regime change from time to time. So the conversation is not new. The question is, why India? Particularly, what I find very fascinating is that on the shared values, as it is known, we have everything to share, but our geopolitical considerations trumps the shared values. And that's something that we have to find a common ground on. Because if United States, like Mr. Eric Garcetti, the new ambassador, made a pompous statement that the human rights and religious rights will be at the forefront of his stay here, and he's willing to talk to people about this matter. Now, that is a very interesting question, and that is a question that comes up in the minds of every Indian, and if not every Indian, at least me, that why doesn't this policy apply to all the enemies of India, or the enemies of democracy, or where the minorities are genuinely impacted? So when you see that duplicity play out, then you know that values are for sake of conversation. The geopolitical interest, hardcore interest, determines the policies. And to that end, India is now positioned in such a way with the frustration with Chinese that they are experiencing, US has to acknowledge that India has a role to play, and they can't play hooky with India anymore. The one point which I would say in this one is the fact that these people are looking at somebody who is more manageable, quote unquote. So that's where the regime change comes in. Who can I manage better? And in my opinion, I think that Prime Minister Modi, who is by current ratings as the most popular head of state in any country, he is not a manageable guy to the extent that they would like to do. Perhaps somebody else would be more, quote unquote, manageable by the deep state there or people that matter. So you can see this element that played out some time ago, that in the G7 meeting, Mr. Biden went overboard to embrace Mr. Modi, saying that you make it important that democracy exists. How important democracy is. I found that funny. It was like Biden making a statement about Obama. Oh, he speaks good English, you know. So I would not take Biden's statement seriously for one reason. He is given to making those pompous statements, and also the fact that there is a meeting coming in June. So he is praising him sky high, and Rahul Gandhi is going to the United States. So we all know the machinations that go on. Will the US want to interfere in Indian elections? Perhaps not directly, but they will certainly play the game through the multitude of NGOs and what have you, the mass management schemes of various NGOs where they fund it, and that will happen. Because the idea is to have somebody more manageable, and that's what the game plan is.
एंड इसी के बारे में और भी आगे बात करें तो इफ़ यू लुक एट एरिक गारसेटी, पुअर फेलो, उसको किसी ने अपॉइंटमेंट नहीं दिया दिल्ली में. नो बडी इम्पॉर्टेंट, इनफैक्ट नो गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल गेव हिम एन अपॉइंटमेंट. तो वो अब जाके बॉम्बे में इधर उधर घूम के और कभी मन्नत में जाके मन्नत मना रहा है, शाहरुख खान के साथ मीटिंग कर रहा है, गोइंग टू इनकॉन्सिक्वेंशियल पीपल. सो आई रिमेंबर डॉक्टर जयशंकर had said कि उनको आने दीजिए, हम प्यार से समझा देंगे. तो ये क्या यही प्यार से समझाया जा रहा है एरिक गारसेटी को? व्हाट डू यू थिंक?
आई थिंक सो, बिकॉज एरिक गारसेटी जो हैं, इनका जो सबसे बड़ा क्वालिफिकेशन है, ही इज अ बाइडेन फ्रेंड. फॉर 2 years उनका अपॉइंटमेंट स्टॉल हुआ था, सेनेट में कोई हियरिंग नहीं हुई थी. ये समय देखिए, वो कहते हैं कि ऐन वक्त पे जो कहते हैं इसको भेजा है यहाँ पे. अगर ये 2 साल पहले आए होते तो अब तक इनको जाने की यात्रा करनी पड़ती. तो बाइडेन वुड हैव हैड टू सर्च समबडी मोर अगेन. तो इसको लाया है, समय देख करके इसको भेजा है. तो मेरे विचार से गारसेटी मूर्ख नहीं है, विद्वान भी नहीं है, लेकिन ये वो हैं, वो वफादार हैं जो माफिया में कहते नहीं है कि एग्जीक्यूटर जो होता है, वो बाइडेन की प्लान और डीप स्टेट की प्लान को एग्जीक्यूट करने की शायद कोशिश करें. और उनकी बात जो थी कि ह्यूमन राइट्स की वायलेशन के बारे में, जो बड़े डंके की चोट पे वो कह गए हैं कि ह्यूमन राइट्स की जो डिस्कशन है वो हमारे सामने रहेगी, हम उसको बिल्कुल बड़ा मुद्दा मानते हैं एंड माइनॉरिटी इश्यूज को लेकर के. तो मैं समझता हूँ कि उनकी न्यूसेंस वैल्यू इंडिया के लिए ज़्यादा है. एंड आई थिंक प्यार से इग्नोर भी करते हैं ना. तो जैसे आपने कहा कि उनको आज तक कभी ऑफिशियल कुछ हुआ नहीं अदर देन सबमिशन ऑफ हिज क्रेडेंशियल्स. तो घूम रहे हैं बम्बई में, पानी पूरी खाना खाए होंगे, पाव भाजी खा रहे होंगे, शाहरुख खान के थोड़ा कौन सी पिक्चर है, दिल दे चुके सनम, नाच करेंगे शायद. मुझे उनसे उनकी कोई प्रतिष्ठा नहीं है. कैलिफोर्निया मेयर या जो भी थे वो वहाँ पे एलए में, वो फेल्ड थे.
फेल्ड मेयर.
ही वॉज अ फेल्ड मेयर. बट एक होता है पॉलिटिकल लॉयल्टी के कारण उनको जगह दी गई थी. तो एम्बेसडर बनते हैं लोग. जैसे कि यूएस में एम्बेसडर की जो नॉमिनेशन होती है वो होता है कि किसने पार्टी को जितना पैसा दिया. सो यू बाय द एम्बेसडरशिप. अनफॉर्चुनेट बट दैट्स द वे इट इज. तो इनको लाया गया है एज अ पार्टी एक्टिविस्ट टू क्रिएट जो भी डिस्टर्बेंस और जो भी गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसी होगी ये उसकी चर्चा करेंगे.
इसी को देखें, अगर आपने USCIRF की चर्चा की, उसका उल्लेख किया, तो ये बताएं, ये USCIRF जो है ये कोई यूएन बॉडी नहीं है, ये यूएस गवर्नमेंट की बॉडी है. ये स्टेट डिपार्टमेंट को रिपोर्ट्स देती है. और भारत को पाकिस्तान और अफगानिस्तान के बराबर रेट करती है। इसके अलावा जो डीप स्टैब्लिशमेंट है वो जिन रेटिंग एजेंसीज को फंड करता है, वो चाहे वीडेम हो तो इंडिया में जो डेमोक्रेसी है वो लोएस्ट रेटिंग देती है, या आपके प्रेस फ्रीडम में अफगानिस्तान से भी नीचे रखती है। तो ये जो डीप स्टेट है उसकी डिज़ाइंस तो बिल्कुल स्पष्ट हैं, और मुझे लगता है कि भारत को भी इसका आभास है, इसलिए वो इन सबको पूरी तरह से नकार देता है। और जो एमईए के जो स्टेटमेंट आते हैं वो इनको एक तरह से दे नॉट जस्ट डीबंक देम, दे एक्चुअली ट्रीट देम विद deserved contempt. I think it is transparently obvious that this is a game going on. Why doesn't the US think that this would be very obvious to the Indian state and also to the Indian people these days?
देखिए, यूएस गवर्नमेंट में क्या होता है कि वो अपनी एजेंसी क्रिएट करते हैं। तो अगर आपको किसी के ऊपर इन्फ्लुएंस करना होगा तो कहते हैं ना कि डिनायबिलिटी होती है। मैं नहीं कर रहा हूँ, सरकार ने डिपार्टमेंट मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स नहीं कर रही है, वो डिपार्टमेंट कर रहा है। तो वो इस तरह से वो अपना उन्होंने व्यवधान बनाया हुआ है अपना कि हम किसी से नहीं, हमारे पास डिनायबिलिटी है, फलाने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने आपको इस तरह से रेटिंग की है, आप हमारे पास आइए, हम बात करेंगे। तो वो उन्होंने बड़े डायरेक्ट इनडायरेक्टली वो इंटरफेयर करते हैं दूसरे कंट्रीज के अफेयर में। इन सो फार एज ये जो रिलीजियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, मैं तो चाहूंगा कि आप सब लोग देखें इसको, पब्लिक जो है इसकी वेबसाइट पे जाके देखें। आपको नाराजगी होनी चाहिए, गुस्सा आना चाहिए, रंज आना चाहिए। और आपको आज सोशल मीडिया के टाइम पे यूएस गवर्नमेंट को फ्लड करिए मैसेज दे करके कि वहां पे एक उस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में एक भी हिंदू नहीं है। जो हिंदू तो छोड़िए, इंडियन नहीं है उसमें। उसका जो हेड है वो क्या कहते हैं, ठग कहेंगे उसको, जो कोई इंडाइट हुआ है सारे किसी किसी केस में। तो व्हेन यू हैव अ सिचुएशन लाइक दैट, वो मैनिपुलेट कर रहा है, यू हैव टू गिव। समटाइम्स वो कहते नहीं है कि आपको अपने अपोनेंट को भी कभी कभी दाद देनी पड़ेगी कि बंदा वो खेल खेल गया हमारे साथ। ये चीज हम लोगों को समझनी पड़ेगी। हम जो ज्यादा इंडियंस हैं, खास करके हिंदू इंडियंस जो है, मैं चर्चा कर रहा था किसी से कि कुंभकर्ण श्रीलंका में रावण का भाई था और हम हिंदू यहाँ सो गए। कहते हैं मजाक होता है कि
अमेरिका में सो
सो गए यार, हिंदुस्तान में भी सोया हुआ है, हिंदू जागेगा कब? हिंदू को मत जगाओ, वो भी सोया हुआ है। वो वाली बात हो गई है कि लोग इस बात पे देखते नहीं है कि किसी चीज का जब उल्लंघन किया जाता है, अगर मुझे आपको छेड़ना हो, मैं बार बार आपको छेड़ता हूं, कभी तो आप रिस्पॉन्ड दोगे ना। तो आप जब कभी रिस्पॉन्ड दोगे, फिर मैं बोलूंगा देखो देखो वो ऐसा कर,
विक्टिम प्ले करूंगा,
विक्टिम प्ले कर रहा है। दैट इज द इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट जो हमें समझना
पहले
पड़ेगा।
प्रोवोक करो, उसके बाद फिर जो है वो रिएक्शन आवे तो फिर विक्टिम प्ले करो। ये तो इस्लामिस्ट प्ले बुक है। और कुछ इस्लामिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो लॉबीज हैं वो डायरेक्टली इस USCIRF से लिंक्ड है। ये सारी की चीजें जो है वो हमारे सामने हम देख चुके हैं कि किस तरह से IAMC, मुस्लिम ब्रदरहुड, ये सारे के सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस इनके आउटकम्स को इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे हैं,
और बोगस डेटा के साथ।
देखिए
साहब, मजाक और दुख की बात यह है, दोनों ही चीजें हैं इसमें, कि प्यू रिसर्च, कार्नेगी फाउंडेशन, इनके डेटा अवेलेबल हैं साहब, जहां की प्रूवन है। प्यू रिसर्च के डेटा दुनिया मानती है। कार्नेगी की उसकी रिस्पेक्टेबल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, उनकी डेटा में बिल्कुल बिल्कुल निश्चित बताया गया कि देयर इज नो कास्ट बेस्ड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन इन अमेरिका, नन। बट देन लेफ्ट विंगर जो फेमस ट्रायो और द होली अनहोली अलायंस of the elites, the Islamists and the communists, they have found a common enemy of things called India and Hindu. तो कास्ट बन गया इशू, कोई नहीं देख रहा है। और ये हमारे लिए भी शर्म की बात है, दुख की बात है। जैसे मैंने कहा कि हम लोग रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं करते हैं इन चीज़ों पे, हम छोड़ देते हैं। तो कहते हैं नहीं कि देयर आर 3 things they say about action, inaction and no action. हमें इसका अर्थ समझना पड़ेगा मेरे हिसाब से। When you take no action, you do it with knowledge. My interpretation of that. ये तो मैं जानता हूँ कि यहाँ पे कुछ करना नहीं है, इसको थोड़ा आगे बढ़ने दो। You do it with deliberate intent, full knowledge and full understanding कि I will not take any action. Inaction is शिथिलता, वो मूर्खों का वाला हो जाता है कि देखेंगे क्या होगा, आज नहीं कल देखेंगे। So inaction hurts us. और हम inaction और no action को हम action समझने लगे हैं।
करेक्ट।
तो इसलिए हमें उस अपने ही जाल से हमें निकलना पड़ेगा। हमारी जो मानसिक व्यथा है इसमें, इसको हमें समझना पड़ेगा थोड़ा एक्टिव होकर के। एंड जैसे मैंने पहले भी कहा है, मेरा मूल मंत्र आज की तारीख में हो गया है स्वामी विवेकानंद जी का आह्वान, अवेकन, assert and arise, to which I most humbly add my fourth A of Vibhuti Jha is act. Because सारा ज्ञान होने के बाद अगर आपने एक्शन नहीं लिया तो आपका ज्ञान किताबी रह जाएगा, और there is no vidhuta in that.
But I think the American society at large is at loggerheads with the Indian society, in the sense that Indian society and the Indians, Indian diaspora, they're getting it from both sides. They're getting it from the left, they're getting it from the right. There is absolutely a relentless attack from both sides. Right attacks because the church is interested in proselytization, and Republicans are deeply conservative and church-going people, and they don't understand the sensitivities, because for them the church dogma is the ultimate, and the leftists, for them the communist dogma is the ultimate. So we are caught between the devil and the deep sea, the two dogmas.
We are caught between the devil and the deep sea, and you can't be more right about that. Because as we have talked about it, we know now that these dogmas are based on fear and ignorance. The origin, Gabbar Singh aayega, Gabbar Singh nahi aata na. Thunder and lightning doesn't happen because gods are angry. So we now know the science and technology is conforming more to the Sanatan way of life, and we are a threat. However, US में क्या होता है खास करके कि हम लोग अपने आप में इतने रमे हुए थे, काम कर रहे हैं, जी रहे हैं, we are good citizens, happy, we contribute most, nobody will bother us. But होता नहीं है कि जलन होती है.
जलन होती है. There is a fundamental
Absolutely.
of the Christianity that I am a jealous God. That in the fourth or fifth commandment.
धीरे-धीरे से बोलिएगा.
That I am a jealous God. So I think the American society is a jealous society.
It is a competitive society. I will tell you something about living in America, working with American companies. It's a very competitive society. On the religious side, there is another very interesting thing. I have heard this in US channels. Republicans particularly pride in saying that we are the party of natural party. We love nature. We love God for all that He has given us. But the way Hindus have a clash with the Christians is on the conversion principle, because they want to convert everybody to that. We are the most compliant faith. हम शांति के लिए सबको गले लगाते हैं. But the true problem Hindus have in India, or Indians have in India, is the Islamic part of it. Because हम जो थे, Christians loved us. The Americans love us because we are hardest working people. We contribute to the economy. We are professionals. We are all that people know.
Therefore, but they still malign you. They call you casteist.
Correct.
And they hate you on the basis of profiling.
आप एक याद रखिएगा इस बात को, ये कास्ट वाला जो हंगामा है यूएस में, it has happened in Democrat-run states, Democrat-run councils. It has not happened in any Republican-run place. Surprise, surprise. State Senator Neeraj Antani has moved a resolution to condemn this entire thing. He was the first one, as a Republican guy. He was the first one to oppose and condemn the caste-based thing. Ro Khanna, Democrat. Raja Krishnamurthy, Democrat. Pamela Jayapal, Democrat. Ami Bera, Democrat. They haven't condemned that yet. On the contrary, Ro Khanna, the congressman from Silicon Valley, where all this is happening, was taking a photo shoot with the Afghani representative, the first time in California senator. He didn't condemn that. So there is a group of people who, Democrats particularly, and there is a reason for that. See, Democrats got upset with Modi because obviously he was getting along very well with Trump.
Yes.
So I have seen
He's getting along very well with Biden too, except that he doesn't see eye to eye with the Americans on the Ukraine question.
Correct.
And they would like India to toe their line as far as Ukraine question is concerned. And I think the Ukraine question will go away as soon as Republicans win.
I think so. Republicans are beginning to ask the question. और दूसरी बात ये भी है कि अब अमेरिका भी थक गया है. देखिए, लोग भूलते नहीं हैं. ओबामा was running कि वॉर नहीं होगा, ये नहीं करेंगे, सारे वॉर हम वापस ले लेंगे. लेकिन ओबामा के समय में बहुत सारे लड़ाई हुई,
सबसे ज्यादा उसी के
एग्जैक्टली सारे अटैक हुए, ये सब ओबामा के टाइम पे हुआ। ओबामा ने, वो कहते नहीं कि ताल ठोक के बोला था कि हम ग्वांटानामो में बंद कर देंगे, नहीं बंद करवाया 8 साल में। तो you have to understand that there is something works in a different way in the US system. But Trump के समय में there was no war. People have seen that. लेकिन तो वो people are tired of the war now. Because एक तरफ आप देखिए US economy is in a mess and you are writing billions of dollars worth of checks for Ukraine. And Ukraine is not America's war, it's not Asia's war. I think India has handled itself well on Ukraine. Although we have sympathy for the plight of Ukrainians, who wants to any region for people to be killed like that? But there was a major play by NATO. The whole world knows now. All that Russia wanted, that don't go to NATO, don't join NATO. And the promise and commitment given that Ukraine will not join NATO has been violated. But there is a bigger play in it. The bigger play is that,
Well, as far as that is concerned, if you really go back to 1991,
right.
then the red line was that none of the Warsaw Pact countries would be joining NATO.
Correct.
But then by now 17 have joined.
That's right.
So the perfidy has happened on part of the Western Bloc.
Right.
And if Russia is reacting, I think they have a good reason to do so. Of course, every war brings along its own disasters, its own travails and tribulations and human misery. That's all there. But then you have to really go to find out the root cause, and the root cause is the United States of A.
मैं एक और इसमें ऐड करूंगा, अगर आप यूरोप का इतिहास देखें तो यूरोप has a strange amount of fetish with periodical melodramatic boundary adjustments within their own area, Europe. So look at it this way, that they have always had that. Czechoslovakia is gone, Yugoslavia is gone, USSR has had several breakups. And you remember the history of German unification, Italian unification. वो तो उनकी टेरिटरी का बैटल चलता रहता है.
The Austro-Hungarian Empire, that's vanished.
उसके बाद वो क्या करते हैं कि वो make it as a global problem. So you read the Ukraine scenario, they were projecting is all the world will suffer for food supply. Yes, impact hota hai, but it was not that disastrous for everybody. People suffered. Now what has happened is that Asia and India and other countries, they're refusing to accept that Ukraine is my problem. It is European theater, and we will not participate in the European theater. That has been a clear game, and I think I compliment Mr. Jaishankar for one thing, is that he demonstrated the muscles of India in the foreign relations arena. And you call me, that why are you buying Russian oil? But you are buying yourself, but you're telling me not to do that. It is being called out. I love the phrase being that you have to call out when something is going wrong. And if you don't call out, then you acquiesce to that. That's what is important for India to realize. And I think that's the reason. That is the reason. The Jaishankar phenomenon, Modi phenomenon, that the US says, yaar, ye log marriage nahi ho paayenge, ye log hamari baat sunenge nahi. And I want to say this to the audiences everywhere. There is a group of people in the US, Indians, who are peeved with Mr. Jaishankar.
Okay.
They are
group of Indians.
Yes, group of Indians who are peeved with Mr. Jaishankar.
For being forthright.
For being forthright. They say that Jaishankar is not a diplomat, he's not a politician, he doesn't understand the nuances of politics, he's a diplomat, he's a bureaucrat. मेरी बात हुई है कुछ लोगों से इस बारे में. And their thing is that he doesn't understand. United States must be accepted by India as is, no arguments. That is the sad part. There are people who have talked about it.
These are the mental slave types?
They are the mental slave type. They are the type of people who have said this. And I say this because I have evidence of that. I'm not speaking just like that. They have said it. Jaishankar must go. He should be thrown out. They ran a covert attempt to have him thrown out. Let him get out because he's not dealing with the US State Department properly. Didn't realize, but when you find out the reason why, then you realize that during the Congress regime, they had created a coterie of people who claimed proximity to the State Department and the powers that be, the White House and Congress. So these people became the so-called ambassadors of India, interlocutors between the government and the unofficial channels. कांग्रेस पार्टी ने उनको बहुत भाव दिए थे, बहुत भाव दिए थे. वो चैनल क्लिप हो गया पूरा. यहाँ तो प्राइम मिनिस्टर प्रेस को नहीं ले जाते हैं साथ में.
हाँ, यहाँ तो और भी काम करते हैं ना, वो तो बिल्कुल डायरेक्ट स्नब कर देते हैं.
और जयशंकर जी के साथ एक बात और भी है. He will need information from his staff, embassies and consulates. He doesn't need a briefing.
Quite right. And he was a very, very distinguished ambassador to the United States.
Yes, and China.
And China.
That's right.
So he knows the entire global diplomacy like the back of his hand.
That's right.
You are not going to tutor Dr. Jaishankar for that matter. तो ये जो मैं पूछ रहा था कि ये जो 2024 का ये जो डिसरप्शन का ये जो प्लानिंग इस वक्त चल रही है यूएस में, ये किस शेप में लाएंगे? क्योंकि एक तो क्या है कि आई थिंक द मेजर प्रॉब्लम इज कि द यूएस इलेक्शन साइकिल इज नॉट बिगिनिंग. तो यूएस इलेक्शन साइकिल के बीच में थोड़ा इनको तो ध्यान रखना पड़ता है ना.
ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा. लेकिन उसमें बात और भी बताता हूँ मैं आपको. देखिए, वो जो चलेगा वो होगा आपको थ्रू मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन, मैल इन्फॉर्मेशन.
तो वो ट्विटर तो गया हाथ से.
ट्विटर तो गया हाथ से. दैट्स अ ग्रेट थिंग टू हैपन फॉर इंडिया एंड कंजर्वेटिव्स. रिमेंबर जब मैट ताइबी, जिसने की पूरा एक ट्विटर फाइल्स लिखा था, तो उसने बताया था कि 40,000 supposed right wingers from India, their accounts were suspended. We are asking for those names. Who were those names? Whose names were shadowed or whatever happened? WhatsApp blocked out so many names during the previous scenario. So, अब क्या हो गया कि they have created institutions, जो कहते हैं ना कि वो NGOs हुआ या institutions that can create mass information kind of a thing. Facebook. They are the people who are being managed. They are all committed leftist, woke people. That's why it is important for India to be, it is very interesting that from the US point of view, Indian influencers are getting influenced by US influencers.
The slave elites
Yes.
taking it from the master elites.
Correct. That's what is happening. यहाँ पे सडनली आप देखेंगे कि एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. मैंने डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी में देखा है ज़्यादा. एक दिन किसी बात पे टॉकिंग पॉइंट्स जो आते हैं, तो यू विल सी फ्रॉम MSNBC, CNN, डेमोक्रेट लेजिस्लेटर्स, कांग्रेसमैन, सेनेटर, वही शब्द दिन भर वही बोलते रहेंगे. यू विल नोटिस द सेम थिंग अगेंस्ट इंडिया. तो हम लोगों ने इसके बारे में हमें इस बात को समझना पड़ेगा कि जो भी आर्थिक, पॉलिटिकल, सामाजिक इश्यूज पे मोदी जी चेंज लाएंगे, और बहुत चीज़ों की ज़रूरत है चेंज. वी ऑल नो दैट. इंडिया में बहुत सी चीज़ों की चेंज की ज़रूरत है. अब आपने देखा होगा कि फार्मर्स अपने उपज को फेंक रहे हैं सड़कों पे. अगर वही मान लिया होता तो आज
मान लिया होता तो
करेक्ट. अब किसको आप ब्लेम करेंगे?
करेक्ट.
तो ये जो बात हो गई है अब कि ये जो है, वो लोग मास इन्फ्लुएंसिंग सिस्टम जो लेके चल रहे थे, वो अब वो उसको हमें भी नंगा करना पड़ेगा. वी हैव टू एक्सपोज दैम, एंड मेनी इंडियंस विल हैव टू डू दैट.
The other day, we had this spectacle of a space on Twitter where an ex-State Department employee actually bared all the machinations by which regime changes are being done in other places, and also he actually showed us a roadmap by which the Americans intend to do a regime change in India. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did hear that. Yes. It is, what happens is because of the technology and people get to know things much faster than before. In an era 20 years ago, this matter would have remained under the carpet. We would never have known. Now people have pangs of guilt and sorrow, and they want to take over and they want to wipe their sins, as the saying goes.
Okay.
You will appreciate when I say they want to wipe their sins. For having
What about the original sin?
So they want to take care of that sin. Their conscience breaks, and those people come out. That's what is the definition of a whistleblower in the legal terminology.
तो ये जो भाई साहब हैं जो उस दिन बोल रहे थे पूरा का पूरा, और जो मैंने देखा उसमें, वो बता रहे थे कि साहब something like $30 million the State Department has set apart for a regime change in India.
Yes, that's right.
And because of shared values.
Correct. Exactly. Shared values.
Shared values, human rights, and minority rights. These are all buzzwords for regime change. Whenever they get bandied about a little too much, you know that a regime change operation is on. और आजकल बहुत हो रहा है, लेकिन इंडिया इसको टोटली डिबंक कर देता है. तो USCIRF को एंट्री भी नहीं देता उनके बंदों को. दे haven't got an entry into India for over a decade. Even the Congress government would not allow them. तो ये इनको जानते तो है, इसका मतलब they are aware कि ये किस तरह की मिसचीफ करते हैं यहाँ पर. And really nobody cares two hoots for their certification. I think we should start reverse certification of various American states. वो हम कर सकते हैं. That is one. तो ये जो बता रहे हैं भाई साहब, इसके थोड़ा आप डिटेल्स बताएं कि क्या क्या किस किस तरह से ये करने की प्लानिंग चल रही है.
द मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट, आपने एक बात बहुत अच्छी कही यहाँ पे कि हमें भी अब रिटेलिएट करना पड़ेगा. दिस इज समथिंग व्हिच आई हैव बीन वांटिंग, दैट हाउ कम इतने सारे रेजोल्यूशंस पास होते हैं अमेरिका में इंडिया के खिलाफ फॉर ऑल द लेजिस्लेटिव मेजर्स विद द ऑथराइज्ड गवर्नमेंट इज डूइंग पर लॉ, बट वी डोंट हैव एनी रिस्पॉन्स टू दैट. So आप बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं कि we ignore it, but don't ignore it to the extent that it begins to hurt you. That's what is important for us to figure out. We can't. Insofar as this particular thing is concerned, इसमें there was a massive thing about the trigger point. जैसे कि हमने चर्चा की है, US गवर्नमेंट का जो एक रूल है, freedom of religion and there should not be freedom of speech and no persecution of religious minorities. उनका जो है एक बना दिया है उन्होंने कि इस कैटेगरी में अगर कुछ होगा तो हम आपके पीछे आएंगे. We will do sanction also.
We will work as the global police.
We will work as the global police. To monitor that, they have created what is known as a mass advocacy groups, like the mass advocacy groups.
Atlantic Council.
Exactly. They have created mass advocacy groups to push an agenda, and that is backed by.
What about that endowment for democracy?
Exactly.
Victoria Nuland.
Correct. ये लोग ये सब सारे के सारे स्टेट डिपार्टमेंट, चूंकि पैसे हैं उनको, इन गॉड वी ट्रस्ट दे प्रिंट द नोट्स एंड दैट गेट्स सर्कुलेटेड इन वेरियस डिपार्टमेंट. बजट इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम. तो पैसे छाप के बजट अपना ही बनाना है ना, तो अपने ही घर की बात है, तो कर दिया, छाप दो, बजट दे दो. एवरीबडी इज हैप्पी डूइंग मेकिंग मनी एंड हैविंग फन एट द एक्सपेंस ऑफ समबडी एल्स. एंड इंडिया हैज अनफॉर्चुनेटली एंडेड अप because we don't get engaged or we stay aloof. We have become the happy hunting ground. किसी को गोली मारा, इंडिया को मारो गोली. ये जो एटीट्यूड हो गया है कि हम सह लेते हैं, ये हमें इस बात से हमें निकलना पड़ेगा. We have to get out of this colonized mind completely.
China always reacts.
Even a even Pakistan responds. वो तो गिल्टी में लगे रहते हैं, लेकिन उनको तो पता है कहाँ का मार खाते हैं, लेकिन फिर भी वो भी चिल्लाता है. बट लुक एट चाइना के साथ इंडिया की हमेशा कंपैरिजन होती है. चाइना इज इंटरेस्टेड इन सप्लांटिंग यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स एज अ फ्यूचर पावर बिकॉज दे नो दैट दे होल्ड ऑल द कीज टू US लाइफ. If Chinese choose to call in their debts, US will go bankrupt despite raising the debt ceiling. तो यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम ये है कि ये जो इनकी जो मैकेनिज्म थी, कैंपेन करो इस तरह से कि वी नीड अ प्लायबल गवर्नमेंट इन इंडिया जो कि हमारी बात माने. एंड मोदी, बिकॉज ही वॉज अ हिंदुत्व गाय, हिंदुओं को हिट करो, बिकॉज देन वी बिकम अ रिलीजियस मॉन्स्टर फ्रॉम देयर पर्सपेक्टिव. They don't know who we are, and nor have we ever tried to propagate that. So let me tell you something very interesting. This entire caste thing is happening in California. They make it as a bavander. They call it the caste factor existing in India. There is a caste factor, there is a caste issue in India, but nobody educates them. Even government of India doesn't educate them that we have legal provisions of providing for job security, school admission security, college admission security, even promotion opportunities based on reservation formula. We have provided for
Actually, I think it's a problem. It's a problem because we have accepted that guilt.
Correct.
We should not have, because if we really go deep down into our history, we find that none of this discrimination, the way it is portrayed,
Correct.
existed. It was in a different way. But then they say that it is a doctrine. It's not a doctrine.
Yes.
And where it is actually a doctrine, and if you call it out, they say it's Islamophobia.
Correct.
Where it is written in the doctrine that you have to officially discriminate between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. And where the doctrine are the Mahavakyas, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, Iyam Atma Brahma, there they place caste above the doctrine.
Correct.
As if caste is a doctrine, which it is not. We know that. But then we are too shy because we have accepted that guilt that was planted on us, imposed on us by the Britishers.
आप बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं और मैं पूरी तरह से सहमत हूँ. इसीलिए मैं कहता हूँ कि इग्नोर करना अब हमारे हित के में नहीं है. अब हमारे हित में है जब हमें एंगेज होना पड़ेगा. क्योंकि इस बात को देखिए आप कि कास्ट का जो हमने गिल्ट पे लेकर के सारा रिजर्वेशन का प्रोविजन कर दिया. ओरिजिनली वो 10 साल होने वाला था. अब वो पॉलिटिकल टूल बन गया. अब वो कभी जाने वाला है भी नहीं. राइट? तो वो कहते हैं कि आपके यहाँ कास्ट तो है, तो यहाँ भी होगा. But there is no evidence of that there. This is the important point, and there is a school of thought कि वो कहते हैं कि अगर हमने इंडिया में इतना कुछ झीट लिया और हमें इंडिया में प्रोटेक्शन मिल गई, तो why not get the same thing here? But they do not realize one thing: legally this will not hold. But आपको एक बात बताऊं मैं कि California Human Rights Group called Iyers, Mukherjees, Banerjees, and Iyengars as Brahminical monsters. They called it like that.
So what about $1 million defamatory suit?
It will be more than that.
10 million?
Yeah, it will be more.
Why haven't they included Dixits and
I know Jhas and Dixit also.
I think we also should get some enrichment.
That's right. But this is the extent to which it has gone in California, where you have seen that Indians have prospered purely by performance. And what is disappointing, Sanjay ji, for me, I do not know the considerations for which what they do. None of the CEOs, 100 CEOs who are in top-notch positions, from IBM to Microsoft to Google, have come out to say, guys, even in a sense of humor, guys, I'm here because what I did, I performed. I'm not here because I belong to a specific caste.
And the greatest thing about the US, now even the gender is fluid.
Gender to fluid.
So how can anybody else determine your caste?
Exactly.
I have to call out my caste and say that, okay, I am the human caste. My caste is human.
Correct.
Now beat that.
Right. The question is again whether we will ask a Smith or a rabbi what his caste is. So
but they included Southeast Asia as well.
They have included. That's the problem. There is a mistake here.
That they have done in order to escape the discrimination charge.
But they will not escape it because everybody knows. Everybody and his blind uncle knows that who it is targeting here. So this
targeting Indians specifically. It's not South Asian.
No, it's not South Asian.
Nothing got to do with that. इसी में मैं पूछ रहा हूँ ये जो $30 million जो इन्होंने दिया है और इस पे भी मैं आऊँगा कि ये जो इनकी जो करेंसी का क्या होने वाला है. Before we end, I think we got to discuss that as well. ये जो $30 million है ये क्या जो बातचीत वो कर रहे हैं तो उस $30 million को कैसे कैसे अपॉर्शन किया है, कैसे इसकी लोगों को अलग अलग बांटा है, क्या टास्क उनको दिए हैं, उनके डिलीवरेबल्स क्या है.
उसमें वो ऐसा होता है कि जैसे एवरीबॉडी नोज नाउ दैट ओपन सोसाइटी, जॉर्ज सोरोस, उनकी अपनी एडवोकेसी ग्रुप्स होती हैं. तो देयर आर पीपल उस एडवोकेसी ग्रुप्स के सहारे ये पैसे फनल करते हैं. देन देयर आर, एज आई सेड टू यू, देयर आर इंडियन ग्रुप्स एज वेल ऑपरेटिंग इन इंडिया who get indirectly funded from there. So for example, अब आप देखिए इतने सारे हंगामे होते हैं. So for example, a ridiculous extent to which the mass genocide or mass killings may happen in India by 2024, this is an agenda. उस एजेंडा को एडवांस करने के लिए आपको लोगों को पैसे देने पड़ेंगे, चाहे वो राना अयूब हो या शेरवानी हो, जो भी हो। वो आर्टिकल्स लिखेंगे तो पैसे देंगे। तो वो पैसे की मैकेनिज्म बनाई जाती है थ्रू मेनी एनजीओज एंड मास एडवोकेसी ग्रुप्स, और वो मास एडवोकेसी ग्रुप फिर वो लग जाते हैं काम में। आपने देखा होगा कि आजकल सोशल मीडिया के थ्रू मॉब असेंबल कभी भी हो जाता है। वी नो दैट नाउ। मॉब असेंबल कहीं हो जाता है, दे आर पेड पीपल। यहाँ तक कि यहाँ पे जब ब्लैक लाइव्स मैटर और अंतिफा का हुआ था यूएस में, तो देयर वर पीपल हु न्यू दे वर बीइंग पेड टू डू। तो ये जो वॉलंटियर्स, सो कॉल्ड वॉलंटियर्स जो होते हैं, उनको तो पेमेंट होगी ना। जो सडनली क्लाइमेट चेंज के नाम पे लाखों लोग खड़े हो जाते हैं, तो उसको तो पैसे देने पड़ेंगे। सो पैसे $30 million इज यूएस के पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इज नॉट अ बिग डील। वो हम चूंकि उसको सोचते हैं 85 से गुना कर देंगे तो लगता है कि ओ माय गॉड कितने करोड़ हो गए। तो यूएस के लिए $30 million फॉर दिस स्टेट डिपार्टमेंट टू डू समथिंग समवेयर इज पीनट्स। It's nothing. So for American $30 million for a state activity elsewhere to topple a government, to assert American supremacy, that's cheap. There's no big deal about
Okay,
that.
you're giving them ideas.
No big deal.
And otherwise, how do you look at the engagements as far as the pharma, oil, and arms industry is concerned? I think India is hurting US big time as far as pharma is concerned.
Yes.
And that is actually the real place where it is hurting them,
That's right.
other than Ukraine.
That's what is most important is there are two clear divisions in American foreign policy and the State Department. There is Pentagon and there is State Department. Pentagon is all about military supplies, defense, industry cooperation.
And they want to cooperate.
They want to cooperate. So in this particular scenario, you have a clear scenario in which the State Department and Pentagon are operating different.
That's why they have this 2+2 diplomacy.
Exactly.
Otherwise, they would be operating at cross purposes.
Correct. So while you have seen US investments, foreign direct investment in US in India has gone up to $40 billion. And every single sector, you have seen it from Walmart to defense cooperation, they are coming to manufacture here. Whereas the State Department, Secretary Blinken makes a statement that we are monitoring the plight of minorities and human rights in India. That's a joke. So
I think,
and there is a
that's why we told them get lost.
Yeah, there is another very important thing. There is a thing called a generational shift. And you understand that very well, and I think the audience will appreciate that very well. There is a generational shift in the US. There is a generational shift in India. Era of non-alignment is over in India. There is an era of active engagement with knowing. It's not that हम non-aligned हैं इसलिए हम कुछ बोलेंगे नहीं. There is a deliberate intent in participating or not participating. In the US, everything legacy हो जाता है. So John Foster Dulles की legacy, India is a Russian ally and Pakistan has supported us. That legacy remains. That needs to go, just as Indian non-aligned movement has to go. So there will come about, one thing is very clear, that recognition of Indians in America, recognition of Indians living in India, in America is very good. That's very good. Let me put it this way to you, very proudly about that. What is a problem is that certain key operators who move the bell on both sides of the aisle, there has to be a little bit of a realignment on that. वो होगा. Because it is also important to know that India bought S-400. So whole CATSA bill, I read the bill. On another channel, myself and somebody else who was another geopolitical expert, we talked about, will US impose CATSA on India or not, sanctions? And I said, this was much before this issue became a real hot issue. I said that India qualifies for all the exemptions that the CATSA has. Plus, India is far more important than many other countries. There will be no sanction on S-400. It didn't happen. Likewise, money making in the US and the business is a big deal. And defense industry is one of the biggest players. So you have the scenario that people will come to invest in India. Money is to be made. And when you travel to India, you realize how many companies are coming here day in and day out. what is important, let me tell you something. I want to take a personal pat on the back. In 1991, when I went to India, we were a few bankers who were marketing.
You went to US, right?
Yes, US. Sorry. we went to, we were supposed to market India's liberalization program. Today, what we see gives us a lot of satisfaction that the initial hurdles that we faced, we had no narrative. India was a socialist country. To that end, till now, India has become a very accepted entity with requisite changes required.
The happening place.
Yes, the happening place. And I want to tell this something. My son was here in India some time ago, and he said, it's the happening place. India is the happening place. Right. That's what I'm saying.
And yet this silly State Department ignores it. Yes. Is it like the proverbial ostrich?
They're not ostrich. See, what happens is that, that is where the State Department is CIA. Economic hitman lives there. The economic hitman lives there. They're always indulging in manipulation and control, dominate. These are classic features of, government mechanism. Defense is interested in a war.
The US statecraft depends on that.
That's
domination.
Right. That's
domination.
Right. Domination.
Domination.
Yeah. So that's what the whole game is all about. So I think eventually, I'll put it this way to you, India is on a real upswing. And I want to say this also, that Indians in America have now risen. Because two things have happened consecutively. One is the famous battle in New York we fought over swastik, then became the Holi, Diwali, and then people have now become totally consciously aware that things Hindus are being attacked, things Indians are being attacked. So, and it's happening in Democrat-run states. People are suddenly saying, what the hell? I mean, these people take money from us and they're working against us. So caste thing in Silicon Valley has infuriated a lot of India. People who were never on media, they are openly talking about it. And that's what is a good sign. Because that will begin to revolutionize things that is needed. वो कहते हैं ना कि अब जागने लगे हैं लोग.
So thank these stupid Democrats?
Thank the stupid Democrats. I'm a Republican, so I'm happy to call them. I don't call them stupid.
Okay, before we wind up, let's discuss a bit about the US economy. Is it really on a downslide? Do you think it really runs the risk of losing the reserve currency status in the medium term?
In the short term, US will remain the reserve currency status. Going forward, there are two things.
I said medium term.
Medium term, what is going to happen is people are tired. Countries are tired of the US sanction and worried about the fact that one fine morning I get up and I find that all my assets are frozen and seized. Nobody likes that. When you have professed yourself as a bastion of capitalism and providing security to investors from the globe, for political differences, you punish individuals as sanctioned. That nobody likes. That's one. Number two is the fact that United States has become a remarkably obese country. At $32 trillion deficit and your debt to income being 125 to 130%, if you and I had that debt to income ratio, nobody will give us a penny.
Oh yes. Our rating would be right at the rock bottom if there is anything.
Z minus perhaps.
Yeah, Z minus, absolutely.
And
they sit there and all these, the Fitch and Moody's and others, they are rating everybody else, but they don't rate the US government.
They rate, but they don't lower the rating. There was one time that they rated US during Trump era. That was also to slight Trump. Right. They made it from AAA to AA or something like that because of the impact of the tariff barriers they were imposing on China. That was one time. However, what is important is that the US has become a very obese country. All the talk that is going on about the debt ceiling, that's just a mumbo jumbo. That's a typical political play to each one derive and, tug of war, garner as much advantage or draw the leverage. But US will definitely raise the ceiling. But there is a fundamental plot there. The fundamental thing is that now various alternate payment settlements and trade settlements instruments have emerged. tech-driven, financial, fintech-driven, these have emerged. You can't submerge them anymore. You have to accept it and move further. So various countries will have their own bilateral thing. Nobody wants to say this one. I personally feel that, US is worried. I definitely believe that. It's a real concern in America also. Even a common man, I wouldn't say common man, the people who understand the game, they say that we can't hold this too long. Something has to be done. We have become too fat. The belt is no longer holding. So where the cuts will happen, the political party has to understand that. My sense is that US has one advantage over every other country in the world, that it is compared to juxtapose India and the United States. It's, including Alaska and Hawaii, US is 3 times larger than India, has 1/4 the population, and a reasonably okay infrastructure in place. It's a very resource-rich country. So the only way, the reason why the US economy may go down is if the politicians in the US take US for granted too long. But I have a feeling it is a balance sheet adjustment. As a banker, if I may talk, US balance sheet is highly skewed. So they will do some dressing of the balance sheet. Just like if you remember the mortgage crisis, the collateralized mortgage debts, CMDs, they sold to other banks. I have a feeling that US will sell its sovereign debts to other countries under the banner, taking it off its balance sheet, making it as a contingent liability, but not on the principal balance sheet. So that's the way they will be able to trim the balance. I think financial instruments are available. Dollar will not go down because they are so wide as it is. To dismantle that and lose that status, remember one thing, US...
It will not go down in the short term, you
Yeah,
say.
long term, it is. If they don't beef up their entire, deficit structure, the spending part.
So de-dollarization is bound to happen.
It could happen. I would say that don't be surprised about that. But there is a silver lining here for Americans and America is that US was not UK. It was easier for UK to lose its currency as a reserve currency. It was a tiny country, tiny economy comparatively speaking. So वो कहते हैं कि G7 countries में India is larger than the total GDP of 3 states from there, right? So the question is that, there are things which are skewed. So US is the largest economy.
Mm-hmm.
So for it to go down under the tubes, I would say not in my lifetime. But what I do believe is that US will tighten its balance sheet. And, it will survive. Alternate payment mechanisms will come. That I'm 100% sure. This is something I'm aware of 10 years ago when this conversation did start. And there were some Indians who were trying to set up this entire based on various technical instruments that were available to us. Yes.
Okay, so that makes for a very, very engrossing and very, very enriching conversation. Thank you very much, Vibhuti Jha ji. It was an honor to host you here in the Jaipur Dialogue studio.
My honor to be here, and thank you very much. Let me have the pleasure of shaking you by the hand, as a Brit would say. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.